who's a political commentator and analyst joining us from Ontario. So Jennifer Chang, the North Korean position regarding the U.S. is made very clear, and it's been coming for quite some time, the signs of how it's dissatisfied with the U.S. Can you tell us more about their dissatisfaction overall?
They are extremely dissatisfied because if the U.S. continues to demand that the North denuclearize completely first before the U.S. lifts any sanctions, then they are afraid that they're going to end up like Libya. The Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was killed in a coup d'etat backed by the U.S. after he complied with the U.S.'s denuclearization demands that the U.S. is now applying to North Korea. And the U.S. is not showing any signs of backing down. After that announcement by the North, Trump came out in a meeting right before a summit with NATO leaders in London and hinted at the possibility of military action against the North, saying he hopes he doesn't have to take such drastic action, but the U.S.'s military is the most powerful in the world. And he also went back to calling the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un Rocket Man, which hasn't been heard since 2017. Of course, the two leaders were flinging insults at each other over the North's nuclear missile tests at the time. And the North also conducted missile tests on Thanksgiving on Thursday, something it hasn't done since 2017 when it conducted missile tests on the U.S. Independence Day. It successfully conducted its first ICBM test. That was a big success, showing it can hit the U.S. mainland and eventually can hit any spot on the U.S. with a nuclear warhead. So we are rapidly returning to 2017 conditions when the whole world was concerned a world war would break out.
Justin Unruhe, you heard our correspondent there. So are we looking at that, at this situation being as dismal as she just painted it to be?
I certainly think that it can definitely go down that road. I think the DPRK is growing very frustrated with the way that the whole situation with the talks are unfolding. Essentially, the DPRK said that they are willing to talk, they came to the table, and then the United States shows up, it doesn't say anything, doesn't really do anything of substance, makes all kinds of promises, etc., and then they leave the table and attack the DPRK for not going along with the same agreement that the United States itself has not gone along with. Essentially, it's just a one-sided demand, of which, of course, the DPRK is not going to comply with because it undermines their right to self-determination. And then they get painted as the bad guys, as the ones who are not going along with the talks, when it's the United States that aren't carrying them out of any substance to begin with. So the DPRK is making very much an attempt to have these talks, to have a dialogue. Then the U.S. sabotages them and then blames the DPRK for them. And this is one way to create further hostilities between the two countries, ones that could theoretically end up in a war. I'm not particularly, I don't particularly feel that this is that much of a threat, but it very well could happen, but I think the chances are very low because there's a great deal of the mutually assured destruction principle on both sides, something that would carry a toll that neither the DPRK nor the United States could actually bear, given the severity of what would happen. But we are looking at the United States essentially stringing the DPRK along, saying that they're going to make concessions, saying that they're going to act in a more diplomatic way, and then they don't do it, and the DPRK is becoming frustrated. And when the DPRK walks away from the negotiation table because there are no negotiations taking place, then the United States turns around and blames the DPRK and says that they're taking hostile actions towards the U.S. when the situation really is quite the opposite.
Jennifer Chang, there was this interesting statements that were made from first Shinzo Abe regarding the launch of some rockets, or a rocket, I'm not sure, and then the response that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un made towards him. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
course, Saturday, the North said that in the not distant future, they could be lobbing intermediate range ballistic missiles over Japan. That is another throwback to 2017. As I said, the situation is heading towards 2017, and if the U.S. and the North cannot reconcile, then it could head that way. The North basically said that Japan might see ballistic missiles right under their noses, overflying Japan. And, you know, they shot 2 intermediate range missiles right over Japan in 2017 in an extraordinary expansion of military ability. And if they don't go back to nuclear and ICBM testing that could hit the U.S. mainland and destroy any U.S. city, they could opt to shoot 2 intermediate range ballistic missiles over Japan or more, like they did in 2017. So the U.S. really has no way out except to try to reach a compromise with the North. We are looking at the possibility of a return to 2017 and worries about a global war breaking out.
Thank you very much for that, Jennifer Chang. Correspondent there from Seoul, Jason Unruhe. Thank you. Political commentator and analyst. And that does it for our news review.